There have been many periods in history that show how triumphant humans can be. Evils have been conquered, diseases cured, and new worlds discovered. But perhaps one of the more triumphant periods is when the United States set out to explore the last frontier, space. In the late 1950s, the space race heated up. The Americans were behind the Russians, and President Kennedy didn't like it. No one wanted the Russians to win the space race. That would be a national tragedy. In President Kennedy's moon speech given in 1962, he explained to the nation why this race was so important.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
But even an inspiring speech would not be enough to get an American to the moon first. It would take the unbelievable efforts of numerous scientists, mathematicians, and astronauts to make this dream a reality. 3 women who helped make this triumphant journey a reality were Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, and Dorothy Vaughan. The remarkable story of these 3 women were recently shared in the novel and movie Hidden Figures. Their help almost didn't happen. Tragically, discrimination and racism was alive and well during this time period. This was a time when the woman could aspire to become a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. It was a national tragedy that half of the population was still undervalued and allowed far fewer opportunities than men. The inspiring story of these 3 women is clearly a triumphant display of human courage and perseverance. Katherine Johnson was born on August 26, 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. It was obvious from early on that she was gifted with mathematical academic skills. She attended West Virginia High School and completed 8th grade when she was just 10 years old. She went on to graduate high school and started taking college classes at the age of 14. While this academic feat was astonishing in itself, college was not a walk in the park. When she went to college, she was one of the first black students to be integrated into West Virginia's college programs. Being black, a woman, and only 14. That was beyond hard. It was close to impossible, but she did it. During college, she earned a bachelor's degree in mathematics and French when she was only 18 years old. After she graduated from college, she was a high school math teacher for 7 years. While she liked teaching, she dreamed of having a job at NASA. During this time, NASA hired a group of women to do difficult and confusing math. Katherine was turned away the first time she applied. Thank goodness she persevered and applied again. When she tried again the next year, NASA hired her. Katherine and other African American women worked in a separate building with separate facilities from the white workers. The women were called human computers. She usually worked around 14 to 16 hours a day because she loved her job. Since she was always at work, she began to excel greatly at her job. Katherine's math skills were so advanced that she was able to join a team called the Space Task Force. The Space Task Force group was filled with whites who didn't approve of using anything blacks used. For example, the men would not even drink coffee from the same pot that she drank from. This is a tragic result of the severe discrimination that was all over the country. By 1962, NASA was ready to send John Glenn into space. The goal was to have him orbit the Earth 7 times and then re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and land safely. NASA had begun to rely on the new, fast and modern IBM machines to complete the math calculations needed for safe flights. Just days before Glenn was supposed to complete his mission, the numbers given by the IBM machine did not match. It was John Glenn who famously said, "Get the girl to check the numbers. If she says the numbers are good, I'm ready to go." There was so much math to complete that it took her a day and a half to finish it. But once it was completed, Glenn was ready to travel into space. He successfully entered space, orbited the Earth 3 times, and safely landed in the ocean. There were some tense moments during the re-entry and possible capsule failure, but it was partly due to the hard work of engineer Mary Jackson that the capsule held, and Glenn lived to be a very old man. Mary Jackson, who was born and raised in Hampton, Virginia, she attended Hampton's all-black schools and graduated with high honors from George P. Phoenix Training School in 1937. 5 years later, she earned dual bachelor's degrees in mathematics and physical science from Hampton Institute. After college, she started working at the only jobs that were available to black women, which included being a teacher, bookkeeper, and receptionist. These jobs did not satisfy Mary, and she wanted to do more.
She had the mind of an engineer, but at this time there were few women engineers and certainly none of them were black. In 1951, Mary found a job at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA. She worked in the West Computer section as a research mathematician. The women were still working in separate facilities, and there was a strong sense of separate and not equal. After several months of enduring these accommodations, she had enough and took matters into her own hands. In a very daring move, she went to Kazimierz Zarnecki and requested a change. He accepted her and allowed her to work with him in the supersonic pressure tunnel. He quickly saw her potential and encouraged her to take engineering classes. Mary wanted to do this, but the classes she needed to take were administered by the University of Virginia. Because the classes were taught at an all-white school, she had to petition the courts of Virginia to allow her to go. She was one of the first black women to take adult classes in Virginia. In time, Mary was promoted to aeronautical engineer, and her hard work and perseverance made NASA's first black female engineer. She developed expertise working with wind tunnels and analyzing data on aircraft flight experience. It was this work that helped not only Glenn to survive this time in space, but other space milestones such as when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon in 1969, which was before the Russians. In 1978, Mary changed positions again and became Langley's Federal Women's Program Manager. From then until her retirement in 1985, she was able to influence the hiring and promotion of future female mathematicians, engineers, and scientists. She advised them to study and take extra courses to increase their chance of promotion.
Dorothy Vaughan was born September 20th, 1910, in Kansas City, Missouri. Upon moving to West Virginia, she graduated from Beechhurst High School in 1925 when she was just 15 years old. She received a full tuition scholarship to Wilberforce University in Ohio and graduated at the age of 19 in mathematics. Just like Catherine and Mary, Dorothy became a math teacher since there were limited job opportunities for black women. In 1943, Dorothy Vaughan was hired to work at the Langley Memorial Aeronautical Laboratory. It was during this time that then President Roosevelt made a law that federal agencies had to hire from all of American society. Dorothy was assigned to the West Area Computers. It was here that all three women's paths crossed. All three women started at NASA as human computers. While working as a human computer, the white supervisor died and Dorothy took over as acting supervisor. After many years, she became the first African-American supervisor at NASA, and she led a group of entirely African-American women mathematicians. One of the things that made Dorothy special is that she worked for opportunities for all who were in her division, not just herself. She saw that machine computers were the wave of the future, and she planned ahead for it. In 1961, Dorothy moved into the field of electronic computing. She became proficient in computer programming, teaching herself Fortran and also teaching it to her co-workers to help secure jobs for the future. Her main contribution to the development of the space program was with the Scout Launch Program. This was the rocket that designed to launch satellites into orbit around Earth. Dorothy stated that working at Langley during the space race felt like being on the cutting edge of something very exciting. Even though these women all became very successful, it was not without issues. Dorothy stated that, "I changed what I could and what I couldn't. I endured."
What makes these women truly remarkable is that while working 14 to 16-hour days for far less pay than their male counterparts, is that they all were married and raised numerous children. Dorothy had 6 children. One of her children went to work at NASA also.
Because of the efforts of Catherine, Mary, and Dorothy, America was able to win the space race with the Russians. In a triumphant display of the human spirit, these women overcame many obstacles to be successful and contribute to the advancement of society. It has always been a tragedy when people have been underestimated because of gender and race, along with the contributions of many individuals of all races and genders. Man was able to walk on the moon. What could be next? Mars?